What's shakin' bacons? It is time for another Star Wars news review. Oh yeah, Star Wars review in the news. There's a lot of things that have happened and some things that have kind of come back to light. I think the way it is with any news is even if something has come out like a month or so beforehand, sometimes things don't wash up on the beaches of the internet's attention until later. So I think there's a couple things that happened. Some of them are very recent, so let's give them a discuss, shall we? One of them is actually pretty recent, and that is that Simon Pegg, during a podcast, did in fact reveal that Rian Johnson's take on Rey parentage was completely different than what J.J. Abrams had planned. And of course, we already know that J.J. Abrams had written the full trilogy out, so he had indeed planned a full story arc, and Rian Johnson, Captain Arrogant, decided to do his own thing, which I can't go on a tangent about that. I can't go on a tangent about it. I gotta stay focused. So Simon Pegg says that her origins were not as nobody. In fact, J.J. Abrams had planned out to have her have a relevant parentage, possibly a significant one. And he said this on Josh Horowitz's Happy, Sad, Confused podcast. So it is unfortunate, I think, and this is another segue to the fact that in case you guys haven't heard, or in case someone watching this hasn't heard, in fact, there was a story arc that had been planned, of course, for this new trilogy in Star Wars. J.J. Abrams had written drafts for all the scripts, and Rian Johnson decided he knew better and he completely threw it out. It is reported that Daisy Ridley actually mentioned in an interview, I'll just show you. Here's what I think I know. He wrote episode 7 and he wrote the drafts for 8 and 9, and then Rian Johnson arrived and wrote The Last Jedi entirely. Rian didn't keep anything from the first draft of episode 8.
Bully.
We know that there was a completely different plan. I think the general hope would be that Abrams will pick up the pieces and fix the problems that Rian Johnson has created. Let's just keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully this will indeed be the case. Who freaking knows at this point? More recent news, which I'm sure people have also heard of by now, but let's discuss. People have been petitioning Meryl Streep to play Leia. So as we all know, Carrie Fisher unfortunately passed away. Rian Johnson decided to keep her character alive. So what are they going to do with Leia in the next episode? She was supposed to have a very dominant role. How are they going to handle it? A lot of people think they're possibly going to use CGI. Problem, of course, is when you CGI a character, while I think the technology and the level of money that Disney can leverage towards CGI of these characters that have passed, such as what they did for Tarkin and such as what they did for young Leia in Rogue One, is quite impressive and it can produce great results. It's not ideal, and that's a lot of budget that goes toward implementing that theatrical decision. And I love Carrie Fisher. I was really sad when I found out she passed because she was a childhood hero of mine. It's unfortunate that it happened. People get recast, and that's something that we have to live with. And so I think somebody came up with the idea that, hey, if she's going to be recast, why not be Meryl Streep? So Meryl Streep, of course, is kind of like royalty of her own in Hollywood. Meryl Streep has been amazing in every single role she's played. She and Carrie Fisher were on very good terms and interacted closely and collaborated on different movies. So she's somebody that I believe the implication would be that Carrie Fisher wouldn't mind taking on that role and carrying forward her legacy as Leia. Of course, that's going to be, even if they went that way, it's going to be a very controversial decision because Star Wars, of course, has a huge legacy, and recasting such an iconic character like Leia is going to come with some kind of repercussions. However, I think Streep as Leia is an intriguing idea. I certainly can't think of anyone who would be better suited to take on that role and have it not be completely jarring, and who could possibly carry it and carry that regality that Leia had, as well as her spunk and her fiery nature. So as of the time that I'm actually filming this, that petition from the fans currently has over 10,000 signatures. I believe that was their initial goal. Another bit of news, Mark Hamill, of course, poor Mark Hamill, still kind of refusing to believe that Luke is truly dead. He's voiced a couple times in different articles that he doesn't think that Luke actually died in The Last Jedi. And, he hopes that he's been teleported to a nudist colony or something like that. This is an article from the Screen Rant website that's talking about Mark Hamill. Now, Mark Hamill also came out and said that he regrets talking about the differences that he voiced about his take on the character and the way Rian Johnson handled this movie. I have mentioned in previous videos that when he came out and said that, I kind of feel as though he was given a slap on the wrist and he had to cover for things. You're not going to obviously badmouth the company that's paying you your entire salary and your royalties, especially if you hope to ever work again or not be blacklisted. So personally, I feel as though he was sort of forced into saying this, but one can only hope. Maybe J.J. Abrams will bring him back at minimum as a Force ghost. Again, my personal hope is that Rey's gonna open her eyes and Luke's gonna be like, what did you see in your vision? And none of episode 8 actually happened. We'll have to see. I do think it's interesting that he still can't let it go. I think this is actually underscoring the fact that I think he still very vehemently disagrees with the direction that Rian Johnson took The Last Jedi, particularly Luke's character. I think that there's probably a lot of discord between them, particularly when, you know, there's the scene where they were on the panel and Johnson called Mark Hamill a profanity-ridden name, which at the time they passed off like it was fine, but still I may be reading too much into it, but that is a hint to me of a larger sort of animosity and still some clashing that is going on here and some ill will between the two. I'm sure Johnson was not pleased at all that Mark Hamill came out and said, I didn't like it. So I'm sure Rian Johnson harbors some kind of ill will over that, and I wouldn't be surprised if that is a reciprocal feeling. But again, that's just speculation. That's based on my opinion. Speaking of people not being dead, Andy Serkis also has hinted that he doesn't think Snoke is truly dead, and we all know that based on Maul's return, that in Star Wars, being cut in half does not necessarily mean you're dead. So we're all kind of hoping, I believe, that J.J. Abrams can pull some kind of trick out of his hat and give us some sort of background to Snoke so we can understand really the history of what's going on with Kylo Ren and make us believe in him as a true villain. The dropped story leads that we received in The Last Jedi, and again, I'm not gonna think about it. Hopefully we'll get some kind of closure on that. I think Andy Serkis hopes for it too. He did an interview with entertainmentweekly.com where he discussed it in an interview. He would love to think there's room for him to come back, and there's a lot more to be had from the character for sure. He's not currently in discussions with anyone about it, of course. J.J. Abrams and Serkis apparently discussed his background, and Rian Johnson did, but of course Johnson said screw everything that was established and I know better than everyone else, so we're gonna do what I want to do and screw up everything. So speaking of Rian Johnson screwing up everything, he apparently is going to be starting production on his series. I did see a rumor somewhere that even though that trilogy is going to be starting production, he's already been removed as the director for all 3 movies. He's only been actually hired to do one of them, which makes me wonder if perhaps Disney is really not as happy with them as they're attempting to portray that they are. The other thing that's very interesting to me, which is depressing, which is sort of infuriating, is that Rian Johnson has learned nothing. And this reinforces to me the sheer hubris that this man has, and the fact that he is so arrogant that he still believes he has done nothing wrong, and he is, at least that's the story he's sticking to. And in this article at CBR.com, he talks about how despite the extreme backlash against The Last Jedi from many people, and in fact the Rotten Tomatoes score for The Last Jedi has dropped even further after the release of the DVD, which is kind of funny to me, he's not going to allow any of the reactions or the feedback from The Last Jedi to influence his process. And to that I say that's an incredibly ignorant and closed-minded thing to do. It's one thing to completely go in a different direction and disregard a trilogy that's been set up and in your arrogance believe that you can do better than someone who is more skilled than you are. Because yes, I do have the opinion that J.J. Abrams is far more skilled than Rian Johnson. And yes, I have seen other Rian Johnson movies and they were okay, but no, I don't think he's as good as J.J. Abrams. It's one thing to completely disregard everything that's already been laid out for you and assume in your arrogance you can do better, then have such an extreme reaction from a fan base. There was people that pointed out there are massive plot holes and issues with the story that don't make any sense, and so for him to not take away anything or take any kind of constructive criticism or feedback from this is just completely asinine to me. And I think that's a surefire way to make sure that you never grow in your skill set. You know, if you have an artist who refuses to improve their technique or learn anything new, you're not going to have any improvement. You're not going to ever improve in anything unless you allow yourself to take in criticism, filter through it, and then determine, okay, these are things that yes, I could address, or or yes, I could have done differently, or these are weak points or strong points. For you to not acknowledge that you don't have any weak points is an incredible oversight, and it's extremely arrogant, and it just reinforces the fact that I don't like how he's approaching this, and I have no desire to see this trilogy. I want nothing to do with this man, and I wish that they would remove him from Star Wars completely, because it's horrendous thinking about what else he's going to do to this beloved universe of mine and of all of its fans. The last things we can talk about are, of course, some good names that are getting signed to Star Wars series and Star Wars films, and that is the Game of Thrones guys, now frequently known as D&D, and of course Jon Favreau, who did Iron Man 2, he did The Jungle Book, he's currently doing the live action version of The Lion King, I believe. Those are exciting. I'm a little less excited about the Game of Thrones guys getting signed on, but I am very excited for Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau has demonstrated repeatedly that he's not only a good actor, but he's a great director and he's a great producer, and he helped launch the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think that he brings a lot of skill and a talent for honoring established universes and legacies. I think that's already been demonstrated by his work for other Disney films, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I am very intrigued to see what he's going to be doing with his series. As for D&D, I'm torn on this one because on the one hand, I think that they did a decent job of interpreting George R.R. Martin's novels into a television series. There were changes they made that I really didn't like, and in addition to that, once we got beyond the last book that Martin had written, there started to be some holes and things started to fall through in the storyline that exists there, which makes me a little concerned. But we will see. They've already demonstrated that they work well together as a duo and that they're certainly capable of handling something with the breadth and scope of Game of Thrones, and that is definitely experience that I think can be applied to Star Wars. So we'll see. I don't want to make any kind of judgments on that prematurely. That is our news review roundup for today. What are your thoughts on all this stuff? How do you feel about the new directors coming in? How do you feel about Johnson's new trilogy? What do you think? What do you think about all this stuff? If you guys have any news that you want me to review, please feel free to leave it in the comments below and I'll check it out. I'll take a look. I also wanted to just say, and this is really, I'm internally frustrated that I have to say this, but with the news that's come out recently, apparently not all of you guys actually get notified when I put up a video unless you hit that stupid freaking bell down there. So I hate saying this, but if you'd like to be able to get notified that I've actually uploaded something, please hit the bell. It helps me out. That way you'll actually get told when I'm uploading, because apparently people aren't getting told. Of course, if you want to hang out with me live, catch me on Twitch Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to know when I'm going live, if you're busy or you happen to forget, you can follow me on Twitter. I tweet every time I am about to go live. Okay, bye. Catch you later.